Okay, so now we're on part whatever, like I've lost track, and we're going to go into the Masterknot series. So, again, we start with bends. So the Masterknot bend is, it's called a double sheet bend. I don't know what sheet bend means. I'm kind of have an idea, but I'm not 100% sure. So, double sheet bend, how do we do that? So you do a hole in a snake. This comes, well, I'm kind of confusing myself. How do I? It's amazing how you look through a screen and you lose, that is not, you lose your reference for some reason. I always know how to tie a sheet bend. What's going on here? Oh man, how do you tie this thing? Put it on pause. Oh yeah, for one, you need to have two ends. Just not trying to tie the whole thing with one end. So you've got a bite here. You don't actually loop it, you just bend it. And you got your, I actually don't know what you'd call these. These are both working ends. I guess they're two, yeah, they're two working ends. Because they're two separate ropes where they're supposed to be. So you go up the hole, around. Now, and through here, of course. Now, if we stopped here, this would be a regular sheet bend. The sheet bend, the reason why we're learning it is because it's designed to put two pieces of rope together that aren't the same size. So you might have a rope that's pretty thick and then another one that's thinner. If you try any other bend, it's going to slip out. So that's where the sheet bend comes into play. Now I use a double sheet bend because if it's really, the two sizes are very different, even the sheet bend might slip, or so I'm told. So I use the double sheet bend, which is where we were. But I go around once more. So you can kind of call that two coils. But that's a double sheet bend. Oops. Just started slipping, didn't it? Why is that slipping? It's not right. Try it again. This is a less than ideal situation. It's pretty interesting. If you wanted to, if I wanted to do a decent job on these videos, you know, it's going to take like an afternoon as opposed to a quarter of an afternoon, because you got to get your location right and you start doing it. If you aren't quick enough with your statement, you need to do another take, and it's just not worth it. And the consequence of that is it's very very lengthy and patient. Test your patience out, I'm sure. So this is the double sheet bend. This is what it looks like. I believe there's a way of tying it different than these. You want this 90-degree working ends right here. I believe there's a way to somehow do it differently, and it's not as secure. That's what you want. So that's the master bend. Two different kinds of rope sizes, putting them together. Next, the master hitch. Sorry. Is a knot hitch. And what's interesting about this knot hitch, again we're going around this way, always except for one knot. What's interesting about the knot hitch is this knot seems to be unknown, or at least it's not on anybody's records. And it seems like in February of 2012 a guy came up with it for a contest. Somebody had a contest trying to come up with a knot. And that's all on Grog's website at animatedknots.com. The knot hitch, to be frank, I don't know of any purpose for the knot hitch. I used to think it was, I used to use it all the time because it's a quick hitch, quick secure hitch. But now I use the bunt line for that same purpose because I feel that the bunt line doesn't get seized up as bad as a knot hitch. So whatever that's, I keep it on here because it is interesting. It might actually, there might be something to it that I'm missing. I don't want to drop the knot just yet. So, okay, how do I do a nut hitch? It's been a long time. Nut hitch, nut hitch, nut hitch. Pause. Okay. So you have a hole in a snake, right? We go under, over, under, over. Come up with this nice little thing here. And that's it. Now it seems like that wouldn't bind up on you, but I seem to have a hard time getting this out. So all you have to do is pull this up. But I seem to get better results out of the buntline hitch. So I use the buntline for the same purpose, and also the buntline has more of a, you tighten it and it won't loosen effect. Like this, you tighten it and it doesn't, this comes loose easier. And I use the buntline a lot of times just to secure things, and it has a tendency to want to stay with the tension. So I prefer the buntline. They do similar things. But the nut hitch is interesting and simple, and it's pretty secure. So that is, I don't really have a reason to use that knot at the moment. I'm keeping in my list because I could be missing something with it. I'm not sure. And there might be, after a few, maybe a year or 6 months or something, I might say, oh yeah, it's time to get rid of the nut hitch. It's not going to do anything. And then that's great because I can take knots out of the miscellaneous category and put them in there, because I'm sure I know there's a hitch. I have 4 hitches in the miscellaneous that can go into that master series, and it's very easy to get bloated on these lists. Once you start memorizing these things, you keep adding to them. So the next, now kind of going back to our story, just to make a point, if we were in the woods with a friend, I wouldn't use the master bend over the rescue bend if we were in that rescue situation. A sheet bend, a double sheet bend is not as good as a follow-through figure 8 bend. So it doesn't really fit that same scheme that we were talking about. And you could say the same thing with the quick knot, speedy knot series. Excuse me. Okay, so now we have the hitch. Now we need a loop. Our master loop is what is it? Master loop is can't remember the name of it. I know what it is. It is this is one of my names. It's called the Zeppelin loop. And this one wasn't on Grog's website. This was on a different website. They call it the Zeppelin loop because it's based off the Zeppelin bend. The BQ bend is also called the Zeppelin bend. Or it might be the Zeppelin knot, I'm not sure. But this is the same structure of knot. It creates a loop, and I call it the through overhand twice loop. Now, it's not a very pretty name, but it tells you exactly how to do it. So you have your regular overhand knot, your standard knot, and we're going to go through it twice. We're going to go through it. You can also, I never thought about it. You could call it a pretzel loop, or through pretzel twice loop, but I don't know. Anyways, looks like a pretzel. We're going to go through here. The rope's going to come out, and we're going to do a little something here, and we're going to come out of here. So we're going down, and we're coming up. I believe that's the look of it. So, let's see what's going on here. Do I use this end? No, I use this end. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So you go down. And the little confusing part here is how these interact. You kind of go over. You go, I don't know, around it. You go around 2 lines here. This looks really strange to me, but we'll see what comes out. Yeah, that's correct. Wait, this is interesting. No, is that correct? This is something strange I don't think I've ever done before. This little working end right in the middle, And this is like a sideways one. How strange. Huh. I don't think that'd be the advantageous one either. I don't know. This is strange. I've never done it this way, I don't think. Let me do it off camera and try to see how it's supposed to be. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to look. The reason I got what I got is because I tied, well, we'll show you. I tied it with two different ends, or two different rows. It was really strange. I'm sure there's knots to be discovered out there. So you do your regular overhand. Now what I did is I used the other end of this rope and started going through here, which resulted in something weird. But you don't do that. You use the same working end here. Oops, this needs to be longer. And this loop is good because you can loosen the knot easier than you can with a bow line. So this is kind of the weird part. We're going to go through here, but before we just go straight down in there, we go over this first. Actually, I said incorrectly. We don't go down, we come back up. And oof. As cameras make tying knots a lot more difficult. So it's a very attractive knot. And that is the through overhand twice loop. Okay. Next in our master series, we're going to the loop and lines. This is the double snake up hand loop, or I call it snake up hand double loop. This one's kind of confused. This one's tough. I don't know why. I can't recall why. It's hard to remember how to do it. But so the difference is, instead of just going up the hand and around and down, we're doing an extra turn. And then we're going down. And these two do the same. Oops, don't lose it, don't lose it. Do the same. Dress it a little bit. That looks not good. That looks like, never mind. That was, camera, I can't tell. Something looks a little weird about this. Something doesn't look exactly right. A little bit of crossing, but that looks, it's functioning right. It's coming loose. I'm not sure if I did that 100% correct, but you do end up with these double loops here. For the sake of, I could redo it, but I'm going to move on. You can go to animatedknots.com to see how to properly do it. And as comment on that, I don't know why you would need to have two loops like that. However, I just have it memorized. That looks better. I just have it memorized because there might be some situation, but I don't know why you would really need to have two separate hooks like this. So it might be a completely useless knot for most people. A lot of these knots are, they're not going to be used very much at all. But when you get into the master knot series, so the idea here is, if you're just doing the practical knot series, okay, here's practical knots. We want to learn basic knots and what's good. And that's kind of the way I have it. It's not exactly correct because there are different knots like the double highwayman's hitch. That's kind of a neat knot to know, and it can be useful. And it's probably more practical than some knots in the practical knot series. So the names are a little off, but that's just the way I have it set up. So the practical knots, that's for someone who just wants to learn basic knots, and then you want to get into speedy knots, so that's how it goes. And a lot of these master knots, the reason they're in this list is they're uniquely suitable for a very specific task, and there's no other knot that'll do it. As far as having two hooks or two loops on a line like that, I don't know what that's useful for. I thought about it and said maybe it's not useful. If I did stumble upon another lupin line that somehow presented a new advantage, I would very much consider dropping this double lupin line, the snake up hand double loop, because I'm not really sure they'd be used for. But I haven't found a lupin line that does that. And for me to keep my structure of 3 of this, 3 in that, every category, it just works for me. And so, okay, next we're going to move on to the master snare. This is the hangman's noose. I don't know much advantage of this. The reason I learned it is because, let's see, how do I do this? Is because I thought it'd be kind of strange to know 46 knots and not know, the most famous knot. So that's why I learned it. Oops, something right. I didn't pull the right end. Yeah. That's kind of interesting. You can make a little. I guess, I'm not brainwashed. I know that nations fall and whatnot. America's not going to last forever, most likely, if we look at history. So there might be a time where we're having to, re-establish civilization or something. And this is a form of execution used in the Bible. So it's God approves of this execution. And this is a topic where I have to add some comments on here because enemies will try to put words in my mouth and say, oh, you're a Christian and you think you can carry out justice on your own. No, the rulers, God appoints, this is Romans 13, God appoints rulers. Now there's a big difference there. Hitler's favorite verse chapter was Romans 13. And the deal with Romans 13 is it's talking about a godly rulers, okay? We know that, let's see, how do we know? We'd have to go into Romans and that'd be a separate study. But it is talking about godly rulers. And it's not, if you have wicked rulers, they're not godly rulers. And you don't break God's law in order to fulfill the law of a tyrant, of an ungodly ruler. God does work against his people, and like here in America, I believe that God got Obama into the White House because the people of America have turned their backs on the Lord. His name is Jesus, and he'll do that. It's in the Bible where you reject him. Well, he will get you a bad king. Originally, God was the king of the nation of Israel, and they wanted to fit in with everyone else, and they wanted a man to be their king. And God said, okay, well, I'm not going to be your king, and I'm going to give you a king, and this is what your king's going to do to you. He's going to take your men, and he's going to take your property, and you're going to have to pay tribute to him. And so, but anyways, going back to the topic at hand, I don't think if the United States collapses, this might be a useful knot. Apparently, people are using it for hanging. There might be some. It is apparently strong, but I think you could hang with anything. Any other noose. I wouldn't think that the rope's going to break anyways, but apparently they use this historically for a reason. So you can't have. If you have a murderer, you don't just say naughty, naughty murder. You killed my brother and you're a naughty person, and you need to think about what you've done. You handle the issue. So that's that knot. Next, we move on to the grips, the master grip. This one's going to be kind of difficult. We'll see what we can do, but this is not going to be pretty. It's easier if it's dangling. Ooh, this right here is here. Let's see what we can do here. This is typically when I'm doing these, I practice on something like this where you have this weight dangling. It's not all sitting on a table. So the master grip here is called a Prohaska grip. Prohaska is a name that